Hello and welcome back for another live stream. I want to talk about the wide receivers. Big news today after practice or after the Zoom calls today. Head coach Manny Diaz, offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley both talked. I want to get to some of the things they talked about with the wide receivers, maybe some of the big news that's coming with that, and also maybe some questions that you guys might have with the wide receivers because I know it's a huge topic. And we're going to get into that, and I'm going to provide some content, some videos, some interviews from Diaz and Lashley in case you guys didn't see that today. So I definitely want to provide that as well. So just huge shout out to everybody providing the support. Hopefully everybody's doing well, and I will get right into that after a few minutes here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the depth chart real quick so you guys can see exactly what was going on today. And the big news with this is the first time they've done this. So all 9 wide receivers are listed, but they're all listed as co-starters. You see it here in the bold. Everybody's got an or by their name. Basically, it's wide open with all of these guys this week heading into the game against Virginia. There's been some disappointing play with the wide receivers, and I'll show exactly what that is. I know when you guys watch the games, you see certain plays, but basically later in this episode, I want to show you the Pro Football Focus grades, how many snaps each player's had, and where they rank in the ACC. Because I find it very interesting when you actually see it in comparison to the rest of the ACC. So here it is, the 9 receivers, the starters who it's been through the first 5 games. It's been Dee Wiggins and Mark Pope, and then Mike Harley. Whenever they've decided to go 3 wide, he's been that third wide receiver there in the slot. And basically, you're looking at 6 other guys now in competition, and you wonder exactly how exactly it's going to work out in practice this week. Is it really a motivational tool? And once again, Coach Diaz, Coach Lashley spoke on this, and I want to get to their comments as well. But if you guys have any comments in the chat, definitely hit that up. If you let me know what you guys think they should do at wide receiver. I mean, certainly you guys have opinions. What 3 would you go with? Would you make some moves? Are there some things you think that they should be doing a little bit better? Definitely drop in the comments and let me know what you think should be going on at wide receiver. So certainly a big topic. Miami's off to that 4-1 start, like I mentioned. A lot of positives, but obviously you're looking at, can you continue moving forward? Can you improve that production with the offense? Because right now Miami's sitting at 7th in the conference in total offense, yards per game, coming off 2 games against tough defensive teams. So hopefully you start seeing them really put together some good offensive performances. So I think a lot comes to the wide receivers, and it's just a big deal. You definitely want that production at that position, especially right now with Brevin Jordan dealing with a shoulder injury, who had been leading them in receiving but missed last game. And we'll see if he plays this week. You kind of wonder if he's not going to play because Miami's got the bye week next week. So maybe they're going to rest him this week. And Manny didn't talk about it today, but it's just kind of thinking about it. Maybe they'll rest him, have an extra week, and then bring him back after the bye week. So just some things to think about with the wide receivers and with the passing game in general moving forward. One thing I want to look at real quick before we really get going into this, and I do want to get to the stats, but basically I want you to just listen. You saw the depth chart there. I want you to listen to Coach Diaz's comments. Sit back and let me know what you think about him and his comments. Basically, the question was asked about the depth chart, the 9 guys that are now listed as or co-starters, however you want to list it. And here's Coach Diaz here.
Yeah, no, all we're really doing is changing the emphasis on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday will matter in terms of who trots out there for the first play of the game, first play of the second half. As I mentioned I think on this call a week ago, the rotation itself, what we want is we want to be able to play a lot of guys. This is not about these guys can't do it and these guys can. We want more guys that feel like they can do it, and certainly the young players are improving and they are getting better. We had a couple of shots down the field with Keyshawn Smith in the game on Saturday. One, we just didn't get the ball to him, and one, it was a perfectly thrown pass. It was defensive pass interference. So just getting, whether it's Keyshawn, whether it's Redding, whether it's Restrepo, getting those guys more involved in the game. Jeremiah Payton has continued to develop. Obviously we missed him for the time that he was out. So getting all those guys, but that's not to say that, Harley had the big touchdown catch. We thought Mark Pope played very well. on Saturday, played very hard. And so, hey, listen, we're trying to get more guys we can play because that's ultimately makes the whole football team better.
So you heard from Coach Diaz. I thought that was good, the way he explained things to get you an understanding of how they're going to approach this weekend practices. When he mentioned the Tuesday and Wednesday practices, basically, and it kind of sounds, at least at this time, it sounds like the reps will still be there. And I will post the snap counts of all the wide receivers so you can take a look at that here in a second. But basically, he's saying he's kind of basically there's attention on the wide receivers. It kind of sounds like maybe he doesn't want to put too much attention on it, but basically guys are going to need to play well in practice, and they're going to reward guys who do well in practice. And I think that's the thing that you're going to see this week in terms of who starts. And certainly, and Manny Diaz has mentioned this before when he talks about snaps and competition and playing time during a game, kind of equating it to NBA basically or basketball. When guys get in there, they start the game, but basically depending on how they play during the game will determine their playing time throughout, particularly at the end of game. So I think that's kind of its mindset in terms with that. And I think definitely watch that, not just what happens during the game or during practice leading up to the game, but actually how as the game's going on when guys get opportunities. And I think that's the thing. You're seeing the wide receivers right now. You're seeing these young guys get in there a little bit more. You've seen Michael Redding III get in there a little bit more. You saw Keyshawn Smith get in there and get some opportunities with deep balls. So you're seeing some guys, you're seeing Xavier Restrepo now involved in the punt return game. And then, still waiting on Daz Worsham, and there's still Marshall Few. So all six of those guys are looking to challenge, like I said, Pope, Wiggins, and Harley, the guys I mentioned earlier. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. I see we've got some people in here. Definitely just want to shout out. Daniel, you're here. Shout out to you. Glad you're here. Appreciate your support. And Curveball is here as well. I think that's an important thing that you mentioned with the quick slants, drags, and screens. And I think that the runs are really noticeable on third down. And I asked Rhett Lashley today about how third downs have been going. You'll have an article on the site either later today or tomorrow about that. But basically, they definitely, and you heard the commentators, they definitely did not want to really push the issue on third and long. And what Rhett Lashley said, and I haven't confirmed this, but he did say that they were 4 for 8 in third downs, but they have 5 that they third and 11 or more, and basically that really hurt them. But I think that was interesting with the way they just didn't really go to the wide receivers. They certainly didn't trust them in big situations on those third downs. However, you kind of understand it. The times they've had opportunities, whether it was just not connecting, whoever's fault it was, whether it was the receivers getting downfield, creating separation. We've not seen that a lot right now with that one-on-one separation at the receiver position, or De'Aaron King just overthrowing or just not throwing in the right spot. It's been a little bit of everything. But either way you look at it, the wide receivers have to be more productive. It's been something that I've certainly discussed on the streams before, and certainly something that's been talked about essentially from day one. That first game when they really pounded the run, I thought to me that was something that I would have liked to have seen more. Is just getting the receivers involved as a season, just get them ready for the season, because I really did think it was something that they had to work on. So, and I'm going to show some stats here in a second. But real quick, Octopus Knight, glad you're here. Shout out to you. I appreciate you guys stopping in here. Just once again, just popping on the live stream. I didn't make any notice. I just went ahead and did this because it's a hot topic, and I thought you guys would want to talk about this and basically hear how things are going. As we look at the wide receiver stats, and I'll break this down the way, just again, so this is just the wide receivers. I'm not putting in the tight ends, just the wide receivers, the 9 of them here. You're taking a look at the first 3 guys are the starters, Harley, Pope, and Wiggins. I put them in a group, and then that next group is 6. So you've got reception yards, where they rank in the ACC in terms of receiving yards, then total touchdowns, total snaps on the season, and then the Pro Football Focus grades at the end there. And as we look at this, the thing that stands out to me, I'll jump right into the ACC stats. Because you're looking at this, again, this is through 5 games. 188 yards for Mark Pope leads the receivers, but it ranks only 35th in the ACC. And I think that's the thing that's alarming. And you see it right there. Wide receivers will have only caught 3 touchdowns on the year through 5 games. Harley with 1, Wiggins with 1, and then Redding caught 1 late from N'Kosi Perry, the backup. So you're looking at this, and basically I think this would be a good time to talk about maybe these other guys. Who are some guys that you'd like to see a little bit more snaps, What do you think of this top three guys? Are you to the point where just give the guys equal playing time more so? Do you feel like you've seen enough of these five, or do you feel like they're just struggling? Um, you know, Coach Rhett Lashley, apologize. Coach Rhett Lashley mentioned he thought Mark Pope played a good game last week. He actually led them. I think he had the 6 receptions. So maybe you're seeing some signs from Mark Pope. I know everybody wants that 100-yard game, that big time play, those touchdowns. I think that's the thing that I've been surprised about early on. And I, to be honest, I didn't expect this in the sense that I thought De'Eric was going to be able to find these guys, connect with them. And I understand maybe some of the reasonings that Rhett Lashley has talked about, that they haven't had the reps that they normally do. Whether, just passing and throwing, passing and catching reps on that practice field and whatnot, not just games. So maybe that's some of the stuff that's going on. But bottom line, everyone's dealing with this. And this is just what Miami's situation is. I think also just if there's something that stands out to me with those top three, I mentioned the low yardage, but I think the Dee Wiggins at 9 catches is really surprising because you look at the snap count, he's by far played the most, and his PFF grade is not very high, just the 9 catches. He's had some opportunities, but just not off to the start that I would have expected, because he's a guy that's got good size, in the sense got good height. His biggest strength is his downfield speed. I would have thought they would have connected at least one time where you're getting that big play downfield. It's just not happened. There was a time last game where you guys saw it where De'Eric threw the ball essentially away from the corner. Wiggins had to make a play on it deep downfield, and it looked like to me that his hands, like he didn't have his hands high enough up on his shoulder pads where the corner was able to get the ball loose, and instead, really going up and getting it. You kind of let the ball settle down a little bit more than you would have liked. And I know it's a tough play. That's the thing with plays like that. And there wasn't a ton of separation. That's the thing that you're seeing with all three of these guys. You're not seeing a lot of separation. So there are contested catches as you're looking at this. Just kind of looking again at some of the comments. Dennis Lopez is here. Appreciate you for stopping by here. And Daniel wants more production at tight end. I think the thing about the tight ends, those guys have been doing really well. I think what you're seeing though with the tight end production, and Miami's been one of the most productive teams in the ACC at tight end, and I don't want to veer off course too much because I just want to stick with this wide receiver discussion, because I think a lot of this makes a difference moving forward. If Miami wants to secure this second spot, because assuming Clemson goes ahead and get that top spot in the ACC championship game, if Miami's going to stay in the running, and there's a bunch of teams that are, Notre Dame hasn't lost yet, and there's 3 other ACC teams with 1 loss. So essentially Miami's in a group there of 5 teams right now with 1 loss or less looking for that second spot. To me, if they're going to go ahead and stay out in front, they're going to have to play well with their wide receivers. You cannot be very one-dimensional. I don't think you can be one-dimensional in the passing game and only go to the tight end, especially because I've talked about this a lot, but Miami's not been able to get production from tight ends, both tight ends at the same time in the same game. So because you've only got one guy, I feel like teams can really do their best to take that away, and it really puts a lot of pressure on the wide receivers. Basically, if the wide receivers aren't making plays, you're seeing teams being able to stack the box against the run, and that's why you're starting to see a little bit less production, in addition to playing good teams on defense. But I think that's some of the things you're seeing there with the wide receiver position and the importance of why they need to produce. Martin, what's going on in the future is Reddy, Payton, and Keyshawn, height and speed. I think that's the thing too, and I've talked about this a number of times, but no wide receiver on the team is listed at more than 200 pounds, and I think that's going to be something moving forward you'd like to see. A little bit bigger receiver, again, just to give the offense a little bit better look, a little bit more diversity and versatility with their players, because you always like guys that can do certain things. You talk so much about guys that do well in the slot. Everybody likes that slot receiver. It's a popular thing right now. But you've also got to have that big receiver that can be a good possession receiver, a guy that can really win one-on-one matchups downfield. And I think that you'd like to see these guys, if it's not this group, if it's not going to be one of these groups. And I think Michael Redding III has a chance to develop into one of those big-bodied receivers. I'm not sure how big Wiggins is going to get, even at 6'3", but I do think it's something that this team needs moving forward, just to develop some versatility once again at that position. Just taking a look at the wide receivers. Appreciate everybody jumping on now. And I had comments from Manny Diaz earlier, and I'll get to Rhett Lashley here in a second. I think there were a couple things that stood out to me with what Rhett Lashley had to say. Once again, I asked him about third downs, and we'll get to that a different time. I'll have that article on InsideTheU.com. You guys can check that out. And there's also plenty of content there, full interviews on the channel right now. If you guys haven't seen them as well, if you could, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. That's a huge help as well if you guys want to do that. And also the notifications in case so you don't miss these streams and whatnot. But with what Rhett Lashley talked about, and I'm going to get to that right here, but I want to set it up. Question was just about these receivers at the top, Pope, Wiggins, and Harley, his thoughts on those guys. And then he talks also about these young guys kind of getting more involved as well. And here's Rhett Lashley, offensive coordinator for Miami.
We've been playing the young guys a little bit more the last 2 weeks. I think the best thing is those guys just got to come compete every week, and the guys that are playing the best in practice and having the best game are going to stay in there. Those guys have been working really hard the last 2 weeks. And I think, at times they've made some really nice plays. I thought Mark Pope had a nice game the other day, and it's still frustrating sometimes that, maybe you aren't seeing the fruits of the labor on the deeper throws. We were really close on a couple the other day, got a couple pass interferences, and, we just got to keep swinging, because eventually those things are going to start to connect. And when they do, I think you'll see that really opens things up for us offensively. But, we just got to keep continuing to get better each week, and can't get discouraged. You just got to keep swinging until you get a breakthrough. And, we got a lot of confidence that we're going to get there.
So you heard from Coach Rhett Lashley, and I thought those were some good comments as well. Once again, a little bit more insight into the wide receiver position. His full interview is on the channel, but I want to break this down into just the wide receiver talk. And I think that some of you guys are understanding maybe what's going on with some of the wide receiver play. You guys have been talking about it all offseason on the site, been checking that out on the message boards. And so there definitely was some concern going into it. And I remember at the beginning of the year, going into the game against UAB, I was really impressed with their receiver, their top guy, Austin Watkins Jr., and just kind of saying, this guy's really talented, really good player, and kind of looked at it in the sense of, look at what happened last year at Miami. KJ Osborne transfers from Buffalo, a similar program as UAB, and he was their best receiver. And I don't think it was close last year. I think by far you would have to say KJ was their best receiver. A guy like Watkins would be their best receiver now. And I think that took a number of people by surprise. And what you've seen each and every week with these receivers, you're looking at not just with Watkins in the opener, the second game they go against Tutu Atwell. You've seen some of the Florida State guys. I know Tamarian Terry was hurt, but you saw the productions he's put up. If you guys watched with North Carolina, if you watched their game over the weekend, we saw Clemson. These teams have really good, they've got good receivers. And I think that's the thing that you're kind of noticing, kind of going into each game, week in and week out. If you stack up the wide receivers, Miami's wideouts against the opponents, there's not many times where you've said Miami's got the better receiver or the best receiver in the game. And I think that's the thing that you're looking at. And I think that's what makes it so glaring, not just the numbers, but just seeing that, what are other teams doing? What kind of production are they getting from their wideouts? And I think that's what you're looking for. And certainly, you'd like to think Miami the receivers are a little bit better than what they produced. But bottom line is, this is what they've produced. This is the production they put on the field. These are the results, and they certainly got to get better. And once again, I'll bring up the image once again with the receiver stats so you guys can take a look at it. And just real quick, we got some good discussions. I think it's good to see that you guys are talking about the different guys. And I think the Redding, Payton, Keyshawn Smith discussion that Martin wants to talk about is good. I think curveball mentioning that King needs to throw to the receiver that's open, or I know what you're saying, to throw it to the open area, let the receiver go get it. I think it's still just a work in progress. Once again, with how D'Eriq King has performed in the first 5 games, I've been a little surprised that he hasn't hit the ground running a little bit more. I think maybe you're starting to look at maybe the adjustments. He's still making that adjustment, getting used to his personnel. think he's still a lot of things, getting used to a new team, getting used to playing again. Remember, he missed most of last season, only played the first 4 games. I just think that I will be surprised if this is what De'Aric's going to be all season long. And I understand a 5 game sample size is certainly a lot of games. It's nearly half the year. I just will be surprised if he doesn't pick it up. And maybe I'm going to be wrong, and they'll probably, there could be a point in time where I revise my comments on what I expected from him in comparison to what I've seen. I just feel like there's more there that's coming. I feel like even last week and mentioned that he was okay with. He felt De'Aric played well, and talked about the interceptions. Obviously, you don't want the numbers getting up there too much, but for a guy that did struggle, he did throw 4 touchdown passes. So you're hoping he could just build on that. Once again, try to connect with these wide receivers. There has to be ways where Rhett Lashley can help in this situation, whether it's different routes, different route combinations, and things like that. And maybe that's some of the stuff that you guys saw in terms of the open plays, particularly with that Mike Harley play. And I know it's only a small thing because he was wide open and the whole thing, but I really like that move that Mike made there at the goal line, that nice spin move, just showing a little bit of ability right there, that little flash. I think that was good. It was good for Mike to get in the end zone. Again, wide open most of the time, but he went ahead and finished that off. And one of the things I've discussed, and I kind of wonder if this might be the case moving forward, even though we haven't seen it or signs of it, but I wonder if they're going to look at Mike Harley a little bit more on the outside as opposed to only in the slot, just for some more versatility, give the team a little bit, another downfield threat, and maybe just kind of move guys around. I don't know if that's going to happen. Once again, haven't heard any signs of that. I just wonder if they're looking at possibly doing that a little bit more with Harley. So yeah, just looking at the comments here. Lenore's, what's going on? Glad you're here. Yeah, Daz isn't playing. I have him at 1 snap. I know his stats are cut off, but basically, no catches, no yards or anything like that. But yeah, just the 1 snap. I just think he's a little bit behind those other guys. I'm not surprised. But once again, he's mentioned here as a guy, as a co-starter. So we'll see. And I think my big thing is when coaches do this move of making things wide open, and we saw it particularly going back to the Al Golden days. He did it a lot with the jerseys. If you guys remember, they did first team practice jerseys were different, and it was almost like a motivational tool. But the thing about motivational tools, same way with this, when it says or, I look at, Manny Diaz dealt with it, not just Al Golden. I just remember specifically that's a thing Golden did with the practice jerseys each week. Manny did it last year with the quarterback situation. When you make these declarations that everything is wide open, that you're looking at things from ground up, everybody's listed as a co-starter like they are right now at wide receiver, you have to follow through with that. If guys have good weeks in practice and you don't reward them with playing time, the players know what's going on. We might not see everything because we're not there at practice, and same way with fans, but the players know. And it's very important for a team, for a coach, that if he's going to make these declarations, that he's got to follow through with it. You can't make this announcement, and you felt like he did it with the quarterback situation last year. Jaron Williams really struggling on a number of fronts. They said it's a wide open contest leading up to the bowl game. And I think there was some disappointment that Jaron was the guy that went ahead and started that bowl game with N'Kosi Perry. Some people wanted him there. Tate Martel, even though he got in the game just a little bit, I still think there's some intrigue. People are curious about Tate. But the point was, it didn't seem as open as it was declared to be. And I wonder, we'll see a wide receiver. Maybe it will be these guys are clearly the best guys. But I just think I think it's important when you make this big announcement and make this saying things are wide open, then you have to deliver. And we'll see. And who knows? If this happens where a new guy gets in there, starts, if he gets some catches early, maybe this is an opportunity for them to really take a job and run with it. I think there's a lot of fans of guys like Jeremiah Payton. He's been slowed a little bit, missed the 2 games. And he was out. And then, Michael Redding III mentioned him showing flashes. I know many of you like to see Xavier Restrepo in there. So I think there's some intrigue. Me personally, I've been very high on Keyshawn Smith. That's the freshman receiver that I'm the most intrigued by, most interested by. I've mentioned, you guys remember the offseason conversations I had with his trainer, and then just seeing the film of Keyshawn, I really like his speed, and you're seeing it in flashes where he is getting a little bit of opportunities. I do think, coming down with those catches is key for a guy like Keyshawn. A guy like Michael who had the touchdown, I think that was good for him. Just again, you've got to produce when you get opportunities, even though you're not going to, when you're a reserve, you're not judged the same. You're not, it's kind of like a challenger for a heavyweight fight. You've got to really knock out the champ. You've got to really play better than the starter. If it's close, they are probably going to keep it with the same guys. So those backups cannot afford to be unproductive with their targets and their opportunities. They've got to make the most of them. So that'll be the thing to look for. When they get in there, they've got to get catches, produce, make a guy miss, make a big play, do something to make it seem like you deserve to be out there more. A few other guys in here. Brother Vince is here. Shout out to you. Appreciate your support for dropping in here. And here's the second part of Rhett Lashley talking about the wide receivers. And this one, he's talking about those bigger receivers that we talked about. Guys with a little bit more size right now. So he's talking about Payton, Redding, and Keyshawn. Those are the three he kind of talks about in this clip that I want to show you guys here.
It's been interesting. Michael Redding started doing some good things early in the season, and then kind of just had some aggravating injuries that didn't keep him from playing, but probably slowed down that progression. Same thing with Jeremiah Payton. I thought in the first game of the year he showed some really good things, and then had to miss a couple weeks, so that kind of slowed him down. Now we've got him back, and Keyshawn Smith, he's shown he can really run. He had a really nice deep route last week. He ran by the guy, and we just right off the fingertips, and it was borderline interference. So we were really, really close there, and he can stretch the field. And, those guys have length. My hope is all three of them really continue to develop into more of a threat to stretch the field. But, Keyshawn can run. Jeremiah's really long, and Michael's really, really dependable. So hopefully we can keep those guys consistent in the practice rotation, in the game rotation, to where, as young guys, like you said, two are true freshmen. Jeremiah's a redshirt freshman who's never played till this year. Hopefully the game will start to slow down. Like I said, sometimes a guy makes one or two really good catches, and all of a sudden the light clicks on, and it kind of opens up the floodgates, and that's kind of what we're looking forward to.
So there's Rhett Lashley once again. I thought that was good. It's always good to get the opinions of the coaches, and that's why I wanted to include this in this video, in this stream here, as we talk about once again with the wide receivers. If you guys are just jumping on, I appreciate you guys for doing that. Not good. I didn't, provide that notice, but here's a question by Martin. I hope if it's Martine or Martin, I apologize for getting it wrong. But your question is, you say, Chris, your professional opinion, why are the top three receivers battling? You're privy to information the rest of us don't have access to. A little confused on the question. I think maybe if you're asking about why are the top three guys struggling, I can maybe address that a little bit more. And if you want to clarify, go ahead. But I will talk about why the top, what's going on with those top three guys, in particular with each one of them. I think the biggest thing that stands out to me with the three of them, all three of them have their limitations just from an overall ability standpoint. I think if you expected a lot more from them, I think that's a little bit, I think you're expecting too much. Now, I think you can expect a little bit more production on what you've seen from this season, particularly with Derek King, a good quarterback. So you would expect a little bit more than what they're producing. So I do think that. If we talk about each guy individually, I think if we talk about Mike Harley in particular, Mike's a guy that has, works hard, really good leadership, toughness over the middle, praised for all those things. He's got really good speed. However, he does not have the elite speed that a guy like Philip Dorsett had. And it's hard to compare Dorsett, who became a first rounder, but you're talking about a guy that was similar sized player at Miami. Philip just a little bit bigger in that mold, but just a lot faster. He had that elite speed where Mike's really good. He has good speed, don't get me wrong. He just didn't have that speed that Dorsett has. So with that, and then with that being said, Mike isn't the strongest receiver that they have. He also doesn't have the ability, the cutbacks, the ability that you're always looking for with the smaller receivers. So while Mike certainly is a solid player, I think some of those limitations affect his production on the field. And I think you've seen that in his career a little bit these first 3 seasons. With that being said, I thought Mike did a really good job last year of really fitting into a role and really, producing with those touchdowns. I've mentioned that a number of times, and I mentioned that because I was definitely pointing out that his touchdowns were really low. So when he did produce with touchdowns, I always want to make sure that I give guys credit too when they are starting to essentially buck the trend of what's been going on in the past. So I think that's the thing with Mike. But once again, really good leadership, good work ethic. I think he can be more productive than he's been. Like I mentioned earlier, I think he's a guy that maybe if they get him outside a little bit more, I think there's some ability to make plays. And I think there's been times with Mike that there's been some drops, and to me, drops happen. Look, that's just the flat out nature of the position. With that being said, I think some of them have been a little bit uncharacteristic. He's a guy that wants to make plays, and I think from watching him in practices and things like that over the years, he's a guy that is pretty sure-handed, and I think the drops are just coming at the wrong time because I wouldn't be surprised if he, has some games where he just doesn't have drops. So that's just a little bit about Mike Harley. And just real quick, kind of moving on. We'll start with Mark Pope. There's a lot of questions about Mark. What's been going on. I know he was hyped a lot in high school. He was a guy I watched in high school quite a bit, in practices as well, over at Southridge. So I think with Mark, he talked about drops in particular. And Mark is certainly a guy that works hard and wants to do well also. And I think all these guys do. I hate when maybe that narrative comes up with guys. I just think with Mark, drops have just been an issue with him. Whether it's practices or games or regardless or whatever the reason might be, his catching ability is just not on par where it needs to be in terms of being productive. And it's not just that he drops in games, because typically when we watch drills and stuff, it does happen with him. And it's been like that since he's been at Miami. So I think he just really has to improve his hands to be more productive. But once again, you certainly see the flashes. You see the ability. He's got the quick feet. He has really good lateral quickness in that sense. And he can get up to good top speed as well. I think Mark's a guy, and talking to people that are close to him, I think confidence is an issue with Mark. And I think when you talk to him, if you were to ask him that, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm confident. But I think the people that are close to him do wonder if they have said to me that, just needs to be confident, more confidence. And it's tough because that confidence thing for an athlete is tough because it's the chicken or the egg thing, right? Like you can't make plays without confidence, but you can't be confident without making plays. So it's a little bit thing like that. I think Mark would be a guy that would do well if he's just able to relax a little bit. I know there's a lot of pressure on him, particularly this season, and you worry about, just the pressure mounting. But once again, Rhett Lashley mentioned it, and you did see a little bit of signs of that last week. A little bit more production, getting his hands more involved, or trying to get him maybe on some reverses. I think you'll see that more with Mark moving forward. Some wide receiver run plays. I think the wide receiver screen plays are good. He's a guy that doesn't need a lot of space, but he can get to a top speed quickly. He has that good acceleration. So I think there will be more production with Mark. Once again, not the biggest receiver. I think at one point he was listed at about 175 pounds, so not real big. He's not that bulky, that 6'1", 190 range that you're thinking about maybe him being. He's just a little bit lighter than that, and he's still working. I think that's the thing with Mark. I think there are more productive plays in the future for Mark. It just hasn't happened yet, and we'll see how that goes moving forward. So here we go. And I want to get to Dee Wiggins, but real quick before the comments, I don't want to miss anything. I saw somebody, Divas here, asked about Njoku and maybe with evidence. So he transferred, and last year, and I think he's at UCLA. Maybe you guys know, maybe I don't want to look it up, but anyways, he did transfer out. Just basically with evidence, just tall guy didn't produce. Wasn't doing much in practice. They tried moving him to tight end. Really good size at 6'6", but he was a guy that was it was just looking like it was going to take him a while to be a productive player. But once again, the only thing you would say on the flip side is what I mentioned earlier. You like guys that do different things at wide receiver. In evidence, there was nobody even close to his size. But if you decide to move on and wasn't getting playing time, you definitely understand why. Lenoris, appreciate you for saying hit the like button. That's a huge help. because yeah, definitely if you could hit the like button, that's a huge help for everybody. I want to get to Dee Wiggins a little bit here, but Brandon's here, Rico's here. Appreciate you guys for stopping by once again. And Kerry's here, awesome. And you dropped that nugget about him transferring. So yeah, and he, like I said, he's already picked a school. I apologize for not knowing that real quick. But anyways, with Dee Wiggins, I think Dee's the one that's intriguing to me because I mentioned earlier with the 9 catches that you guys saw in the stats, you saw his Pro Football Focus grades, and you saw the snaps. He's been routinely all year long. He's been the guy getting the most snaps at wide receiver. I think he's also a guy kind of like Pope and Harley. They just need this breakout game. They need a breakout performance, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the 100-yard game, the 120, anything crazy. I just think, a solid 4 or 5 catches to 75 yards, something like that. Getting in the end zone would certainly help all of these guys because I think if you see any one of these 3 guys get that productive game, I think you're going to see them follow it up with more production because I do think some of it's just starting to build a little bit. And I think there just needs to be more of a point of emphasis going to wide receivers. I thought that early on in the first game. Personally, I would have liked to have seen them work on that. I think that's important. If there's a game that gets out of hand, and obviously going into this game against Virginia, based on how Virginia's played this year, 1-3, lost 3 in a row, really struggling. I think you got to look at it. If you're Miami, you are favored to win that game. This is a game that I would like to see things kind of get back on track, running game, but particularly with that passing game. And I think it's important for them to not only they've got to find time in a game to work on these things. And I thought the UAB game was a good example of that, where they can really work on things moving forward. That's some of the stuff that you like with the non-conference schedule normally in a normal season, where you go to them and you're able to get the ball, kind of do some different things, prepare yourself for the conference play. Obviously, with the one non-conference game, it's not allowed them to do that. But if there's any point in time to allow them to work on their passing game, I think they have to take advantage of it, particularly with receivers, since that's what they're talking about. So going back to Dee Wiggins, again, he's a guy that you like certain things in high school, watching him in high school, watching him play, you like certain things about him. Mark Pope was the main recruit for Southridge when they were teammates. But there were certain things that you liked about Dee Wiggins with his height. He had that speed to get downfield. And again, just a little bit limited. He's not that overpowering guy at the position. He always talks about working on his hands. Almost every time we talk to him over the years, talks about part of his game that he wants to improve on. He's always talking about getting better at his hands and running routes. It's always a big thing for him, not just be a 9-route guy. He was like that a lot in high school. And I think they want to kind of work him into some different routes at UM. And I think he's still developing once again. So I think all 3 of the receivers, I think that's the big thing that I would say is that all 3 of them have abilities. I just think all 3 of them also have their limitations. And I think there's, when you're talking about a well-rounded, all-around wide receiver at each, maybe wide receiver prototypes that each one of them are, they're just not all the way there yet. And I think there's some limitations, and you're seeing that with the production. And once again, if you guys are dropping on, I'll wrap this up because I don't want this to go too long. But I definitely I'll put up the stats once again as we get out of here. But yeah, I see some guys jumping in, talking about Jacoby and Romello. They fight for the ball. Yeah, you definitely like that trait. It's so important, and you'd like for Miami, once again, do that, have those kind of plays, and really build on that with their confidence. And once again, I'll show the wide receiver stats as things look here. Heading into week 6 against Virginia, or game 6 against Virginia, I think this is a big one for Miami. I didn't mention it there, but again, Virginia 1-3 on the season, really struggling. Miami's got to find a way to be productive. I'd like to see their offense produce. I think you've had 2 really tough games against defenses that are really good. I know Virginia, Bronco Mendenhall really likes to pride themselves on their defense. I just think Miami's got to find a way to break through and really have productive games with the run game, particularly with the pass game, and particularly with their receivers. I'd like to see De'Aaron King find these wide receivers. Only the 3 touchdowns to these guys through 5 games. And once again, looking at this, it's their receptions, yards, where they rank in the ACC in terms of individual leaderboards, in terms of the yards. That's why you see Mark Pope ahead of Harley on the ACC rankings, and then Dee Wiggins outside the top 50 at 57th overall. I'd like to see all those numbers grow up. You'd like to see these young guys, if they get in there, that they're productive. I've been surprised about Jeremiah Payton and his He just has not been involved. You see the snaps are getting up there. Again, that's 78 snaps. The one catch is disappointing. But I do expect, Payton to be involved in this offense. I think there's room for it. I think there's room for Keyshawn Smith as well. Michael Redding, if they want to go to the slot more with the backups with Few and Restrepo. And then we'll see about Daz Worsham. But I do think there's some ability with Daz. You just might have to be a little bit more patient just because you're sitting at the ninth on the depth chart. It's a little bit difficult to get in there. But if he does, he's got to do well. Special teams is big for all of these guys if they have roles on special teams to go ahead and take their role, what they do have, be productive there, and then move forward. So lastly, I'll kind of wrap this up. If you guys have any final questions, let me know as we get on out of here. Just one stream on wide receivers. We're going 40 minutes deep, so appreciate everybody. And if you guys are just jumping on now, I included conversations, responses from Coach Diaz and Coach Lashley about the wide receivers in this video. If you guys want to watch it back, you can check that out. Just wrapping this up. But if you guys, if you like this video, if you like the stream, you can hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Plenty of content coming as well. Last week I did not do the live stream or the simulation. If you guys like those simulations of games, I'll do one this week if you guys like it, of Virginia and Miami. You guys can check that out. But I did do last week. I created the 1970 throwback uniforms. If you guys like those, if you like that style of video, just kind of mixed it up. Just being a little bit of creative, doing some creative things. So, and during the bye week coming up after Virginia, I've got some creative ideas as well. But like I always appreciate everybody. If you have ideas, definitely let me know in the comments. I always read all your comments. So appreciate everybody. I see Mason jumping on here. Appreciate you, man. Hopefully things are going well with your season. Glad you're on here. And hopefully everybody else is doing well. And we'll see. Once again, reason why we did this is because the depth chart came out. Miami announced they got 9 co-starters. That's different. They've never done that. They've had all 9 listed on the depth chart, but they've announced that they've got 9 co-starters. So we'll see. And we'll check back in tomorrow. And then Wednesday, Coach Diaz usually talks on Wednesday. Maybe get I definitely want to catch up with him on Wednesday and definitely ask him. That would be my question. Typically, we only get one question, but my question would obviously be, his reaction or his thoughts on how this has looked since they opened it up. So Hurricane Millie is here. Appreciate you. I know you're always here as well. So glad everything is going well. Appreciate everybody for jumping on. Again, you can check all the stuff on InsideTheU.com. You can check the channel for full interviews for Lashley and Diaz. I posted them on here as well. And I'll have a story on third downs. I found very intriguing how Miami's doing on third downs this year compared to last year and the red zones. And what's crazy to me is it's not just what they've done on the offensive side of the ball, defenses as well. So I'll have a whole breakdown on that. And I asked both coaches about that. I'm kind of fading here, but I'm going to go watch that Chiefs game tonight. So that's the squad. So hopefully they're doing well. And Dennis, real quick, USC after the third quarterback news for Jake Garcia. I think everything is the same with Jake Garcia. It still seems like he's in play, and Miami would certainly love to have him. And so definitely just keep that in mind. One thing just real quick about Jake, I know he liked that video. If you guys remember that live or that simulation I did about Valdosta and Lowndes with that matchup, I saw Jake's comment. He really liked that. So just real quick on Jake and just kind of wrapping this thing up. Appreciate everybody. Thanks again. You can watch this back, and we'll definitely do this again hopefully soon. And thank you guys for all your support. Appreciate everybody for hitting that like button and subscribing. I appreciate Lenora's for dropping in here and telling people to hit the like button. So thanks again. Great seeing so many familiar names, and everybody take care, and we'll talk to you guys soon.